Have you ever watched a science fiction show that pulled you in with mystery and style, only to leave you stunned at the very end? The 1970s gave us many bold experiments on television, but one of them broke every rule the BBC thought was safe. A series where courage did not guarantee survival, hope did not protect heroes, and the final scene changed television history. And the real surprise is still waiting for you near the end. Number 15, Planet of the Apes, 1974. Planet of the Apes begins like classic adventure television, but quickly slides into something darker and surprisingly thoughtful. The story follows two astronauts who crash far from home and enter a world ruled by evolved apes. At first glance, it looks like a simple spin-off of the earlier film series, but viewers in the 1970s soon discovered that this show played by different rules. The BBC aired it with curiosity and caution, because its tone was far heavier than expected. Instead of clean victories, each episode pushed the heroes into dilemmas without easy escapes. The astronauts faced constant danger, shifting alliances, and the painful truth that they could not change the world around them. Their attempts to spread peace only made their lives more complicated. There was no grand hero moment, no last-minute rescue. Each chapter ended with consequences, not triumph. Behind the scenes, producers struggled with how bleak the show could be while still airing in a family slot. BBC programmers were uneasy about the underlying message, which hinted that society can fall apart when understanding disappears. The show was cancelled before giving fans closure, leaving the heroes stranded forever. It did not shock the BBC with a dramatic final blow like later shows, but it taught viewers that not every story offers a return home, a brave, unusual entry for its time. Number 14, Space, 1999-1975. Space 1999 began as a bold attempt to create a grand science fiction universe on television. The BBC did not expect a quiet, dreamlike, and sometimes frightening tone that set it apart from everything else on the air. When the moon is knocked out of its orbit, the crew of Moonbase Alpha becomes unwilling travelers through deep space. What made the show special was that the dangers they faced were never simple. Strange energies, cryptic beings, and psychological threats pushed the crew again and again toward the edge. In many episodes, minor characters disappeared suddenly, raising questions the show never answered. Admirers loved this unpredictable atmosphere, but younger viewers were caught off guard by how grim some stories became. The BBC received comments from parents surprised by the intensity, especially during episodes where the crew faced illusions that twisted their fears. Even with limited effects, the creators delivered a sense of cosmic mystery that felt far ahead of its time. There was no final victory for the people of Moonbase Alpha, no return to Earth, no perfect ending, only repeated brushes with disaster that left the crew exhausted but still moving forward. The unresolved nature of the show helped cement its legacy. It showed that science fiction could embrace uncertainty, raise questions that linger long after the credits, and hint that survival itself might be the only reward. A haunting and thoughtful addition to this list. Number 13, The Fantastic Journey, 1977. The Fantastic Journey looked like light adventure at first, yet quickly revealed a stranger and more haunting personality. The story followed a group of travelers stranded in the Bermuda Triangle, thrown into one mysterious environment after another. BBC viewers tuning in expected colorful fun, but what they got was unsettling atmosphere, sudden character challenges, and episodes that questioned identity, time, and reality. What made the series memorable was its willingness to explore psychological pressure. The travelers met advanced societies, isolated survivors, and places where time behaved unpredictably. Allies betrayed them without warning. Technology failed at the worst moments. The show hinted that the Bermuda Triangle was a powerful force, selecting who entered and who escaped. Many episodes ended with the group barely surviving the latest twist, pushing the tone far beyond normal family-friendly adventures. Production trouble behind the scenes meant the show ended abruptly. Instead of a final explanation, viewers were left with an unfinished story. The heroes remained lost between dimensions, trapped in a loop without rescue. BBC audiences were left confused and fascinated in equal measure. The lack of a proper ending gave the show an eerie edge it never intended, but strangely benefited from. For some fans, its unresolved nature is what made it unforgettable. A peaceful, simple adventure, not even close. Number 12, Logan's Run, 1977. Logan's Run took place in a world built on a single rule. Life ends at a set age. The film adaptation was already well known, but the television version hit BBC screens with a quieter, more thoughtful examination of freedom, control, and fear. The series followed Logan and his partner Jessica as they search for a place called Sanctuary. At first, it feels like a chase story, but episode by episode, the tone grows heavier. The pair encounter communities controlled by strict systems, isolated survivors hiding behind broken ideals, and groups forced into choices that test their humanity. What stands out is how often Logan faces situations where he cannot help everyone he meets. Decisions leave marks, paths close. The BBC was surprised by how mature the themes were for a weekly adventure show. The series lasted only one season and ended without solving its central question. Sanctuary was never found. Logan never learned whether true freedom existed. Instead, the final episodes became a quiet reflection on how people cling to order even when it harms them. The heroes were not defeated, but they were left searching in circles with no promised ending. That lingering sadness gave the show a reputation for being more daring than the network expected. A journey defined not by resolution, but by the longing for it. Number 11, The Tomorrow People, 1973. The Tomorrow People was marketed as friendly science fiction, but anyone who watched it from start to finish knows how often it drifted into uneasy territory. The BBC expected a bright show about youths with special abilities, yet many stories placed the characters in danger that pushed well beyond comfortable boundaries. These young people could teleport, read thoughts, and communicate across distances, but their abilities attracted unwelcome attention from those who saw them as tools. The most striking part of the show was how the Tomorrow People learned that being different meant facing fear from others. Some episodes explored themes of isolation and trust in ways older viewers immediately recognized. Even though the show stayed within safe limits for families, the ideas underneath were sharper than expected. The heroes often had to escape from situations where people misunderstood their abilities. Their victories were never grand. They were careful, quiet achievements earned through caution rather than force. The BBC appreciated the creative approach, but raised eyebrows at how tense some episodes became. More than once, teachers and parents questioned whether the stories were too intense for younger viewers. The show continued for years, but maintained a melancholy thread. The Tomorrow People rarely found the safe place they dreamed of. Their struggles shaped a generation of viewers who learned that courage sometimes means enduring fear rather than defeating it. A thoughtful and underestimated show. Number 10, The Starlost, 1973. The Starlost began with one of the most gripping setups of the 70s. Humanity has survived a disaster by launching a massive drifting arc through space, filled with sealed biospheres meant to preserve cultures from Earth. But something has gone terribly wrong. The arc is off course, the crew is missing, and most of the inhabitants have no idea they are living inside a vessel heading toward disaster. When three young people accidentally discover the truth, the journey becomes a race to save everyone aboard. BBC viewers expected a bright space adventure, but what they got was a slow, eerie exploration of forgotten civilizations trapped in isolated domes. Each biosphere had developed in strange, sometimes unsettling ways, shaped by generations of misunderstanding. Some had fallen into strict rule, others into confusion. The heroes traveled from world to world, only to discover that nearly every society was facing its own crisis. Help was difficult to give, and hope often slipped away through miscommunication or mistrust. Behind the scenes, the production faced technical hurdles, yet the atmosphere remained unique. The idea of a giant ship drifting endlessly created a sense of quiet dread. The biggest shock came near the end of the series. Despite learning the arc is seconds from disaster, the story ends without showing whether the heroes succeed. There is no reassurance, only the lingering fear that they ran out of time. BBC audiences were startled by this unfinished fate, making The Starlost one of the most haunting entries of 70s science fiction. Number 9, Moonbase 3, 1973. Moonbase 3 arrived on BBC screens with the promise of realism. Instead of grand adventure or colorful aliens, it focused on the day-to-day human challenges of operating a scientific base on the moon. The creators wanted something grounded, almost documentary in style. What nobody expected was how heavy the show would feel. From early episodes, Moonbase 3 embraced tension, paranoia, and the constant reminder that life in space was fragile. Each episode placed the crew under pressures that revealed their fears and limits. Technical difficulties became life-threatening events. Psychological evaluations uncovered deep worries. A disagreement could escalate into a full crisis. Instead of presenting space as a place of heroic triumph, the show treated it as an environment where a simple mistake could shatter everything. BBC audiences were fascinated by this approach, but the tone was so intense that some viewers found it overwhelming. The final episodes took this tension even further. One incident spiraled into a disaster that left the base in a state of irreversible loss. There was no grand rescue or final uplifting moment. The show ended on an abrupt and sobering note that suggested the harsh truth of human vulnerability. BBC decision-makers were surprised by how grim it became, and the series was not renewed. Moonbase 3 might not have delivered the dramatic ending of later iconic series, but its closing moments carried a quiet devastation rarely seen at the time. Number 8, The Omega Factor, 1979. The Omega Factor arrived on the BBC with a bold concept. Instead of focusing on futuristic machines or distant worlds, it explored the limits of the human mind. The story followed an investigator drawn into a government unit studying psychic events. On the surface, it looked like a mystery show with science fiction edges, but each episode peeled back another layer of unsettling possibility. The hero, Tom Crane, discovered abilities within himself that placed him in growing danger. The more he learned, the more he realized that powerful groups were watching him. The BBC expected thoughtful storytelling, but the resulting episodes carried an emotional weight that startled both audiences and executives. Scenes of psychological pressure, identity confusion, and eerie visions gave the show a tone unlike anything else airing that year. Some viewers wrote to the BBC expressing concern that the series was too intense for general audiences. Others praised it for daring to explore territory normally avoided by mainstream television. What made the show unforgettable was its ending. Crane was left emotionally battered, spiritually cornered, and facing forces far beyond his control. There was no heroic escape and no satisfying resolution. Instead, the series closed with the unsettling idea that the mind can can be a battlefield with no true victory, a low-budget series, yet unforgettable in its atmosphere and courage. Number 7. Children of the Stones, 1977. Children of the Stones is one of the strangest and most quietly haunting science fiction tales ever produced for young audiences. The BBC aired it with the expectation of a standard mystery, but what unfolded was a hypnotic blend of folklore, cosmic theory, and psychological suspense. The story takes place in a small village encircled by ancient stones. As a father and son arrive to study the site, they discover the townspeople behave in strangely cheerful ways that feel almost too perfect. Each episode pushes the mystery further. The villagers seem connected by an unseen force. Time flows in unusual patterns. People change without warning. Even though the narrative avoids anything inappropriate for younger viewers, the atmosphere is deeply eerie. The music alone became famous for its unsettling choral sounds that made even simple scenes feel uncanny. As the story progresses, the heroes begin to understand that the village is caught in a repeating timeline. Every attempt to break the cycle leads to deeper entanglement. The final revelation leaves them escaping, only to realize that the loop continues without them. The village resets. The cycle begins again. BBC audiences were astonished by how dark the concept became, especially for a show aimed partly at families. Children of the Stones remains a rare example of a series that is quietly terrifying, without using any forbidden elements. A masterpiece of mood and slow-building fear. Number 6. The Changes, 1975. The Changes opens with a chilling event. A strange noise sweeps across Britain, causing people to turn against all forms of technology. Machines are destroyed, cities empty, roads become unsafe. The BBC approached the series as an adaptation of a well-known trilogy for young readers, but the result was much more intense than expected. The heroine, Nikki, finds herself alone, navigating a countryside filled with confusion and distrust. What makes The Changes so effective is the realism of the collapse. The world does not end through cosmic forces or large-scale destruction. It breaks down through fear and instinct. Communities form, but suspicion grows inside them. Nikki meets people trying to restore order, but their methods often make things worse. Many viewers wrote to the BBC saying the show made them think about how society depends on communication and cooperation. As Nikki continues her journey, she encounters groups shaped by panic rather than reason. Adults fall into patterns of blame. Children face situations they never trained for. By the final episodes, Nikki uncovers the source of the strange noise, but the path to resolution is frightening and emotional. The ending brings an explanation, but not the comfort viewers hoped for. The Changes left its audience with the lasting question of how quickly life can shift when people lose trust. A thoughtful and quietly powerful series. Number 5. Survivors, 1975. Survivors arrived on BBC screens with an opening that stunned viewers. A global illness spreads overnight, leaving only a small fraction of humanity still alive. The concept alone was bold for the time, but the show went further by treating the event with unusual realism. No dramatic music, no speeches, just the frightening quiet of a world suddenly emptied. The BBC expected a thoughtful drama, but they soon realized they were airing one of the darkest series of the decade. The surviving characters faced hunger, isolation, and the collapse of every system they depended on. Every journey required caution. Every encounter carried risk. The show refused to present tidy answers. Instead, it explored how people rebuild communities when trust is difficult and leadership comes with painful choices. Many episodes ended on heavy notes, reminding the audience that even strong friendships could fracture under pressure. Viewers were shocked by how quickly central characters disappeared from the story. Some left to pursue new paths, others simply vanished, their fate left uncertain. The show treated loss as a constant, and that honesty gave it a weight few dramas matched. Comments poured into the BBC from viewers who said the series made them imagine how they would survive such a world. Survivors was not about triumphant heroes. It was about the struggle to remain human when everything else has fallen apart. Number 4. Star Maidens, 1976. Star Maidens began with a premise that looked playful on the surface. Men and women lived in reversed roles on a distant world. Women controlled the government. Men served in supporting positions. But behind the colorful costumes and theatrical sets was a series exploring identity, freedom, and the limits of social control. BBC viewers tuning in for light entertainment soon found themselves watching a surprisingly layered tale about people trying to break away from rigid expectations. Two men escape from the matriarchal planet Medusa and flee to Earth, triggering political tension. Leaders from Medusa demand their return, while Earth officials try to handle the sudden arrival of advanced technology. The series balances humor with serious undertones. The BBC was surprised by how boldly the show addressed themes of autonomy and privilege, especially during moments when characters questioned the fairness of both societies. What made Star Maidens truly stand out was its ending. Instead of resolving the conflict between the two worlds, the final episodes present misunderstandings, sudden shifts in loyalty, and a sense that neither side fully grasps the other. The heroes gain temporary freedom, but the story makes clear their future remains uncertain. Some BBC viewers found the unresolved nature frustrating, while others admired its willingness to show that progress can be slow and complicated, a campy surface with a thoughtful core. Number 3. Quatermass, 1979. The final Quatermass series arrived on the BBC as a a darker, more reflective version of its earlier adventures. Instead of battling strange forces with confidence, Professor Quatermass returns as an older man searching for his missing granddaughter in a crumbling society. The world is shaken by unexplained lights in the sky, drawing young people into dangerous gatherings. The BBC expected a revival with nostalgic charm, but what they received was a somber story that revealed how fragile civilization can be. The narrative unfolds slowly, with Quatermass discovering that the lights are linked to an ancient cosmic force feeding on human energy. The show blends science fiction with quiet dread, using abandoned buildings, ruined neighborhoods, and frightened communities to create an atmosphere of despair. Viewers in the late 1970s were not prepared for the bleakness. Letters poured into the BBC describing the show as powerful but emotionally heavy. The final episode shocked audiences. Quatermass realizes the only way to stop the phenomenon is through a massive sacrifice. His choice brings a halt to the destruction, but at a cost that leaves no room for celebration. There is no cheering crowd, no proud victory, just silence and the weight of what has happened. The BBC received strong reactions to the ending, and many viewers still consider it one of the most sobering finales in British science fiction history. Number 2. Phase 4, 1974. Phase 4 arrived quietly in cinemas, yet it has remained one of the strangest and most hypnotic science fiction films of the decade. The BBC aired it later, catching viewers off guard with its near-silent tension and slow, creeping fear. The story begins with scientists investigating an unusual rise in intelligence among desert ants. At first, it sounds simple, almost harmless, but within minutes, the film shifts into something far more unsettling. The ants behave with an organized purpose that no one can explain. They build structures that defy logic. They communicate in ways humans cannot interpret. The two scientists studying them soon realize they are not observing a small problem, but a complete shift in the balance of nature. The BBC audience, expecting a routine creature feature, instead found themselves watching a psychological duel between humankind and a collective mind, adapting faster than anyone could respond. The tension grows slowly, captured through long, quiet shots of ant colonies working with eerie precision. Every attempt by the scientists to regain control makes the situation worse. The film builds toward a final sequence so surreal and mysterious that viewers debated its meaning for years. The ending suggests a transformation rather than a victory, leaving the hero's fate open but unnervingly implied. Despite low-budget limitations, Phase 4 created an atmosphere that felt colder and more haunting than many big studio productions. BBC viewers described it as a dream you cannot shake off, a movie where the world changes quietly and the characters simply are not ready. Number 1. Sapphire and Steel, 1979. Sapphire and Steel began with a whisper, not a roar. A strange, elegant pair of agents arrive to repair fractures in time itself. They do not explain who they are or where they come from. They simply appear, calm and precise, stepping into situations where the past, present, and future collide. BBC audiences were fascinated from the first episode. The show's minimal sets and small casts created a unique kind of tension. Every sound, every shadow felt important. What made Sapphire and Steel special was the tone. It refused to comfort viewers. Instead, it offered mysteries with no simple answers. Time behaved like a living force, slipping through cracks in old houses, photographs, and abandoned rooms. Instead of dramatic battles, the danger arrived quietly, creeping into normal spaces. Many episodes ended with Sapphire and Steel barely restoring order, only for a new fracture to appear somewhere else. Viewers loved the eerie atmosphere and the sense that anything could happen. Then came the final assignment. In the last episode, Sapphire and Steel enter a strange roadside cafe, where time has looped endlessly. They solve the puzzle, only to discover the cafe itself is a trap. Unknown beings seize control. The exit seals shut. The heroes are left standing alone as the world outside fades. No farewell, no rescue, no promise of return. The BBC received stunned reactions. Sapphire and Steel, the calm and powerful defenders of time, were gone forever. To this day, fans still debate the meaning of that ending. Many call it the boldest final scene ever aired on British television. And there you have it. The 70s were far braver, stranger, and more unpredictable than history often remembers. These shows proved that science fiction could challenge viewers instead of simply entertaining them. They showed us that heroes can fall, endings can twist, and mystery can be more powerful than resolution. Which entry surprised you the most? Share your thoughts below, and make sure you subscribe for more deep dives into forgotten stories that still shape our world today.